Streets. It wasn't the sound of chaos or intimidation, it was the sound of unity. A brotherhood on wheels, rolling together for something bigger than themselves. At the front of the pack, leading the ride with calm determination, was Trey Carter. A black biker, well known in the community, not for trouble or rebellion, but for his quiet strength and his unwavering belief that the world could change, one ride at a time. Tonight, that belief was being put to the test. Trey glanced in his side mirror. Behind him, dozens of riders followed, their headlights stretching far into the distance like a moving constellation of hope. Men and women of all colors, all backgrounds, all sharing one simple purpose: to ride together against hate. No shouts, no anger, no fists raised, just the steady roar of engines cutting through the tension that had settled over the city for too long. A week ago, this ride had only been an idea. A spark in a conversation, a passing thought between friends at the local bike shop. But Trey knew that words only went so far. Action spoke louder, and in his world, the road was the perfect place to send a message. Bikers understood something that much of the world seemed to forget: respect was earned, not by the color of your skin, but by the way you carried yourself. And tonight, they were carrying themselves with pride, with peace, and with the hope that they could be seen as more than just stereotypes. But not everyone saw it that way. As the riders approached a major intersection, Trey could feel the shift in energy. Police cars were parked along the side, officers standing by, watching closely. He could sense the curiosity, the uncertainty in their eyes. Would this be another protest that got out of hand? Would the wrong word, the wrong move, turn peace into something else? Trey took a deep breath. He knew the weight of history, the way people sometimes expected things to go wrong just because of who you were, what you looked like. But he also knew his purpose. He raised one hand in a silent signal, and like clockwork, the riders behind him slowed, keeping formation, proving that this was not a ride of defiance, but of dignity. A few people had gathered on the sidewalks, some raising their phones, capturing the moment. Some smiled, some just watched. Trey didn't expect to change every mind tonight. Change didn't happen overnight, but maybe, just maybe, someone watching would see them differently. Then, up ahead, a figure stepped out onto the road. A man, standing right in their path. Trey's fingers instinctively tightened on the handlebars. The group behind him followed his lead, slowing down but staying steady. The moment stretched, the air thick with possibility. What was this man here for? To support them? To challenge them? To stop them in their tracks? Trey locked eyes with him, searching for an answer. And then, Trey's heart pounded, but his grip on the handlebars remained firm. He didn't flinch, didn't swerve. He held his ground, letting the bike roll to a slow, steady stop. The other riders followed his lead, their engines rumbling like distant thunder, waiting. The man standing in the road didn't move. His face was shadowed under the glow of a nearby streetlight, but Trey could see the tension in his stance, the way his fists clenched at his sides. For a second, everything was still. The city around them felt quieter, as if even the night was holding its breath. Then the man stepped forward. Trey could see him clearly now, a middle-aged white man, his face weathered, eyes hard but uncertain. He wore a faded work jacket, oil stains marking the fabric, and his boots were scuffed, like he'd walked a long road to be here. Trey exhaled, steadying himself. He had seen this before. The hesitation, the mix of emotions written across a face that wasn't sure what it was supposed to feel. Some people showed up to protest, some showed up to support, and some showed up because they just didn't know what to believe anymore. The man's gaze swept across the riders behind Trey. Then, finally he spoke. "What's the point of all this?" His voice was rough, not aggressive, but edged with something deeper. Trey took a moment before answering. He wasn't here to argue. He wasn't here to prove anything. He was here to ride, to show that peace wasn't weakness. That unity wasn't just a word people threw around when cameras were rolling. The point. Trey's voice was calm, even. The point is that we all share the road. And the world. The man's jaw tightened. Yeah. And what do you think you're changing by doing this? Trey glanced back at his riders. They sat on their bikes, waiting, trusting him to handle this moment. Then he looked at the people on the sidewalks. Some recording, some just watching, curious about what would happen next. Maybe nothing, Trey admitted. Or maybe everything. The man exhaled sharply, shaking his head. I've seen a lot of things in my time. People saying they want peace. Saying they want change. but the world just keeps spinning the same way. Trey tilted his head slightly, considering him. Maybe. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. A long silence stretched between them. The man's shoulders sagged slightly, as if some invisible weight was pressing down on him. Trey had seen that look before too, the exhaustion, the frustration, the quiet war people fought inside themselves when they didn't know which side of history they were supposed to stand on. Then, something unexpected happened. The man took a step back, not in retreat, not in defeat, just stepping aside. Trey nodded once, a silent acknowledgement, and twisted the throttle. The engine growled in response. The riders behind him followed suit, and one by one, they rolled forward, passing the man, moving past the tension, moving forward. But just as Trey rode past, he caught something out of the corner of his eye. The man, watching them go, his expression softer now, something shifting in his eyes. Maybe doubt. Maybe understanding. Trey didn't look back. The road stretched ahead, and there was still a long way to go. As the ride continued through the city, the weight of that moment stayed with Trey, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. There were other things on his mind. The ride had been peaceful so far, but Trey knew the world didn't always let peace be simple. There were always people who misunderstood, who saw unity as a threat instead of a hope, and sometimes those people made their presence known. "You feel that?" Marcus asked, his voice barely carrying over the hum of the engines. Trey didn't need to ask what he meant. He felt it too. A shift in the air. A tension that hadn't been there before. He glanced in his mirrors, scanning the street behind them. The ride had drawn attention, most of it positive, but not all. 2 black SUVs had been following them for the last few blocks. At first, Trey thought it was a coincidence, but they never turned and never backed off. They were sticking too close, like shadows waiting for the right moment to step into the light. Trey's jaw tightened. He wasn't about to panic. He'd have been through too much, seen too much, to let paranoia get the best of him. But he wasn't foolish either. "Yeah," Trey said finally, "I feel it." Marcus nodded. "What's the move?" Trey took a breath, calculating. He wasn't about to lead his people into a trap, but he also wasn't about to let fear dictate their path. "Stay the course," he said. We ride strong, we ride together." The light turned green. Trey twisted the throttle, leading the pack forward. The city blurred around them, the wind rushing past. But in his mind, one thought remained. Whatever was coming, they were ready for it. The wind rushed against Trey's face as the city lights blurred past, but his focus was sharp. The black SUVs were still behind them, moving with intent, too controlled to be just coincidence. They weren't random cars caught in the flow of traffic. They were watching, waiting. Marcus stayed close, his presence a silent reassurance. The rest of the riders followed, steady and unified, trusting Trey to lead. But Trey knew trust wasn't enough. He had to make the right call. His mind raced through possibilities. Who were these people? Trouble from outside the community? Someone looking to send a message? Or just bystanders who didn't understand what this ride was really about? Whatever the case, he wasn't about to let them dictate the night. Trey signaled, a subtle hand motion Marcus caught immediately. They needed to take control of the road, not let themselves be herded. With smooth precision, the group adjusted, spreading out slightly, making it clear they weren't easy targets. Strength in numbers, strength in unity. Up ahead, Trey spotted an open lot. An old gas station long shut down. It was wide, empty, and well lit. If this was going to turn into something, he wanted it to be somewhere they had space to stand their ground. He slowed slightly, guiding the group in. Tires crunched against worn pavement as the riders pulled in together, their engines humming like a chorus of resilience. Trey turned his bike around just in time to see the SUVs roll to a stop at the lot's edge. The doors opened. Trey didn't move. He didn't reach for anything, didn't posture. This wasn't about fear. It was about facing whatever was coming head-on. A man stepped out first, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed sharp and casual. Behind him, a few others followed, their expressions unreadable. But there was no aggression, no rush to escalate, just observation. The man's eyes swept over the riders before landing on Trey. He nodded once. "Trey Carter." His voice was steady, unreadable. Trey held his ground. "That's me." A beat of silence passed. Then, to everyone's surprise, the man smiled. "Relax," he said. "We're not here to start anything. Just wanted to see it for ourselves." Tree studied him, searching for deception, but there was none. He had met men like this before, powerful in their own way, watching from the sidelines until they decided whether something was worth paying attention to. You didn't have to follow us like that, Tree said. Could have just pulled up and asked. The man chuckled. Fair enough. But people talk, and I wanted to see if the talk was real. A black biker leading a peaceful ride, standing for something bigger than himself. That's not something you see every day. Tree stayed quiet, letting the man say what he came to say. You've got people's attention, the man continued. Not just in this city, but beyond it. You keep this up, you're not just riding for yourself anymore. You're setting an example. Trey already knew that. He had felt it from the beginning. This was never just about one ride. It was about changing the way people saw things, saw each other. So what happens now? Trey asked. The man shrugged. That's up to you. But just know, the more you stand for something, the more people will try to push back. Some won't like what you're doing, even if it's peaceful. Tree didn't flinch. Then we keep riding. The man studied him for a moment longer and nodded, like he had gotten the answer he was looking for. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his SUV. The others followed. Engines roared back to life. Tires kicked up dust. And just like that, they were gone. Marcus let out a low whistle. Well, that was different. Tree exhaled, shaking his head. Yeah. The riders around them relaxed, tension easing, but there was something else in the air now. A realization. This wasn't just a ride anymore. This was the start of something bigger. Trey looked around at his people, the ones who had followed him without hesitation. The ones who believed in the message as much as he did, and he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. He swung a leg over his bike, gripping the handlebars, feeling the familiar weight of the road ahead. We ride, he said simply. And with that, the engines roared back to life, and the road welcomed them once more.